in Sook Kim. The mother and daughter were still fidgeting with the pagoda music box and laughing it up as they stood close to one another. And what Sook hated most about these two Americans was how relaxed they seemed. They were the ones who should be out of place in the store full of Oriental merchandise. But no, it was she who didn't belong. The mother was pretty in a way Korean women could never be. Everything about her was long, legs, fingers, even her eyelashes. And she was tall, taller than most men. The girl was also gangly, but it didn't quite fit her, at least not yet. Sook could see how she might grow to look like her mother, but for now her body was stretched beyond the limited boundaries of beauty. American women were big, no doubt about it. Apparently their vaginas were larger too, because all the maxi pads Sook had bought, 3 different brands, were unnecessarily wide. Back in Korea, her breasts had been considered normal, but here they were often dwarfed by girls her brother's age, which made sense. This country was all about glorious excess, super this, mega that, so why wouldn't its people reflect its principles? The mother and daughter approached the register, the girl holding the pagoda music box. "Hello, Harry," the woman said, and Sook's father greeted them with a ridiculous, clown-like grin. "Did you hear that?" Sook said to her brother. "She called him Harry. I think that means he has a lot of hair." And for a second she imagined smacking him on the back of his head. She could almost see it, her hand rearing back, her palm landing flat and loud, her brother furrowing his eyebrows and rubbing his head, looking up at her with his mean face, which wasn't mean at all, but just a younger version of father's. A bump for a nose, tiny bright eyes, ears that stuck out like handles. And no, you idiot, that's his American name. Did you know that's what it was? Her brother shook his head. As her father rang up the sale, she heard snippets of their conversation. He was giving the woman a discount, and she was saying something about another store. Even though Sook had taken 2 years of English in high school, she found that most people spoke way too fast. And even when they slowed down, they used too many words she didn't know or slang that wasn't in the dictionary. From the front counter, her father pointed to them. And now everybody was walking over the showcases, including her mother, who'd been busy arranging the new stock of Chinese umbrellas at the far end of the store. "Hi," the woman said. She held out her hand. "I'm Sylvia, and this is my daughter, Mindy." It was irritating to have to say hello, but Sook complied. Sylvia then shook her brother's hand, and then her mother's, and still she wasn't through. She proceeded to hand out her business cards to everyone. "Animal attraction," the cards read, silhouettes of a cat and a dog bookending the store's name. "Please stop by," Sylvia said very slowly. "We are just 7 stores down." "Yes," Sook said. "Do you like animals? Dogs? Cats?" Sylvia asked. And when no one spoke, she proceeded to bark like a dog and meow like a cat, complete with scratching gesticulations to simulate a feline in action. "Dog, cat, yes, I know," Sook said. She hadn't meant to say it in such a derisive manner, but that's the way it had come out. There was so much she missed. Not just her friends, but everyday things she had taken for granted, like jjajangmyeon, her favorite dish, sweet black bean sauce spread over a bed of noodles. In Korea, jjajangmyeon was purported to be a part of Chinese cuisine, but she'd been to a pair of Chinese restaurants here in the States, and neither had it on the menu. At the last place, some restaurant called Golden Dragon or Happy Dragon or Golden Panda, they were all named stupidly alike. She had mustered up the courage to ask a waiter, who went into the kitchen and reported back that neither of the 2 chefs, both from Shanghai, had heard of it. And the Korean restaurant owned by her father's friend didn't serve it either. She came home that night and began a list in her diary of all of the things she missed. After filling 3 pages, she noticed a disturbing trend. Things she had despised, like her ugly high school uniform, and the stinky movie theater. She longed for them the most. It was an unsettling revelation. To suddenly want the things you thought you hated. It made you question everything and trust nothing. Still, the past was preferable to the present. So that's where Sook spent most of her time, especially when the store was quiet like it was now. Since Sylvia and her daughter left, not a single customer had walked into their shop. So she closed her eyes and saw herself in that old school uniform of hers. The white blouse with a ring around the collar, the black skirt with a rusty zipper that required weekly lubrication with beeswax. On Thursdays after school, she and her friends would bus over to the theater, that smelled of fermented soybeans from the factory next door. And although they would complain about the awful sweaty sock scent that filled the darkness, they weren't happy. She used to be happy. But now she wasn't, spending all her free time at this stupid store, dealing with impatient shoppers, and, even worse, with her father, who was clearing his throat loudly to make sure she knew he was walking over. "Hi," her father said. He stood beyond the glass surface of the showcase like an uncertain customer. She knew it was hard for him to have his family back after 5 long years, but she didn't care. They were now well into the 2nd month of reunification, and she hated him just the same. He was an easy target and a willing one, as if he knew he deserved to be punished. Of course he did. It's all his fault. If not for him, I wouldn't be here. But he did get the piano. That was something. Did she ever thank him, actually tell him the words, "Thank you, Father"? The thought filled her with guilt and hate again, because if not for him, she wouldn't be feeling any of this negativity. She looked up at him and said nothing. 5 years ago, she was 10 years old, 2 less than her brother now, and she had watched her father leave. Watched him wave with his briefcase in hand, the scene in Kimpel Airport growing fuzzy as tears softened her vision. But she loved him then, but she loathed him now. She had become a woman in those years, but he had stayed the same. He wasn't any grayer or heavier or anything, just the same guy who had disappeared. It was almost as if he had preserved himself inside an ageless vacuum as he waited for his family to arrive, so that when they were together again, their lives would magically resume. It was an incredibly heartless, selfish notion. He had uprooted her from everything that mattered, her life, her fucking life, and he just expected her to accept it all, smile and hug and tell him what a wonderful father he was. He did. That was his stupid little dream. And Sook had taken upon herself to wake him up because no one else would. She had never intended to kill herself last month, but she knew the drama of a supposed suicide attempt would serve as a defective alarm. The knife, the pills, the locked door, they would send him the message, especially when it came secondhand from her mother, who had a tendency to go overboard when it came to her children's well-being. He was smiling, his hands folded behind his back. "I have a surprise for you," he said. "You got this in the mail." When she looked up, he was holding an international envelope, blue and red rectangles, alternately running around the edges. She snatched it. "Is it from one of your friends?" he asked. He made her say the most obvious thing. Who the hell else would be sending her mail from Korea? She said. The last letter she'd gotten was 2 weeks ago, and she had begun to lose hope for more. But now, here it was, the return address bearing Youngmi's name. There were people Sook had been closer to, but now this made it 4 letters from Youngmi, while the 2 girls she had considered her best friends had only written once each. It was odd how relationships changed when you moved away, how when you started writing letters, you were actually creating a whole different bond. You almost became a different person. Sook drew the letter to her nose and took it in, and all she could smell was paper. "Aren't you going to open it?" her father asked. This was the problem with the store being slow, the stupid questions, the needless talking. She rose from the stool and told him she had to go to the bathroom. "Okay," he said, keeping his happy face on, though she could tell he was hurt. He shuffled back to his chair behind the front counter and hid behind the open pages of a Korean newspaper. Sook walked away with the letter in her hand. Just feeling the envelope between her fingers filled her with joy. It was only 8 o'clock, still a whole hour to go, so she would use her letter judiciously. she would meter out one paragraph at a time every